Hello and welcome back to the Point and Laugh podcast with your hosts,
Skyler
and Kaylynne. Yay! I think today we're kind of just gonna get into it. But quickly, my drink of the day, everyone.
Of course. It's mandatory.
This is definitely, you know what, I'm gonna get some question marks for this one, and that is fine. I saw it when I was at Trader Joe's, and I was like, I have to just try it. Like it's just one of those things that I was like, just get it. It's by our favorite GT Dave. Berry Ginger Aura Collagen Tea. Guys, and
I'm from California.
Ooh, that's... do I like that? Interesting. This was another product when I was in the Trader Joe's checkout line, and the guy was like, "Oh, like I don't even remember what he said."
I love that quote.
I don't know. He was just like, "Oh, interesting," and I was like, "Yeah, I saw it," and I was like, well, "Why not? Like, what?" And he was like, "Yeah, if it tastes good, like, why not?" He made it sound like he had tried it, so I think he tried it and it tasted good, but I was like, yeah, I don't really know if it like works, like I don't know.
The aura cleansing?
I don't really know if it'll cleanse my aura, but if it tastes good, why not?
I'll let you know if your color shifts.
Yeah.
Because right now you're giving yellow.
Oh,
your aura. So let's see. Purple.
Oh my god, it tastes like ass. Guys, no.
I do love that it's in blue glass. I'm always a slut for blue glass.
I know, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful glass.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that tastes like an armpit.
Yeah,
I'll be honest.
Keep it a buck. My favorite. Here's a quote from the founder, GT Dave.
No.
I created Aura because I've always longed for a... Okay, this is a bold statement. I've always longed for a delicious drink packed with collagen, so I made my own to share with you. After consuming collagen for many years, I'm convinced that it truly does make a difference in how I look and feel. I think it's something that everyone should incorporate into their daily diet. Cheers!
I mean, have you seen GT Dave in, like, real life? Man looks fucked up.
Ugh! That's scary. Anyway, take it away.
All right. I didn't realize I was going to go this deep dive, but are you ready? This is going to be the retrospective podcast on Twilight. I wore my favorite Twilight shirt. It's the fluorescence. I'm so excited. And this is going to cover because I didn't realize I had this much to say. And then I was up until 4 a.m. typing this out, and then more going on later. It's just buckle up. You're going to learn things you didn't know. You're going to reevaluate some stuff you didn't know. Twilight. We all know what Twilight is. It, at the same time, is the perfect Not Like Other Girls book, while also pissing off all of the real life Not Like Other girls by being unapologetically feminine, silly, and taking itself seriously while also having a good time. So, like, Bella as a protagonist is very Not Like Other Girls in that way, where she's honestly, she's kind of a judgmental bitch. If I'm gonna keep it $1.50, like, she's nice enough, but a lot of times, like, Bella is defined by what she doesn't do versus what she does. So, like, she doesn't do dances, she doesn't do dresses, she doesn't do makeup, she doesn't do girl talk, she doesn't do gossip, she doesn't do girlfriends, she doesn't do parties, she doesn't like attention, she doesn't do anything. So in that way, it was very, alluring to people that were like, I also don't do those things. But in real life, just because, and I'll get into it later, the Twilight backlash, so many in real life girls wanted to distance themselves away from Twilight by being like, no, I read real books. Like, so it's an enigma. TLDR, Twilight was a global phenomenon that took place from the first book was published in 2005 and the last movie came out in 2013. So kind of a large chunk of time. And the story follows the everyman Bella falling for the brooding, tortured vampire Edward. She's caught in a love triangle with friend and werewolf Jacob, and she gets just swept up in this world of vampire conflict and half-assed lore.
Sorry, I love the phrase friend and werewolf.
Which one's more important to me? Obviously, the friend part. At one point, she gets married, she gets pregnant, she gives birth to a half-vampire child that she made that kid's life even worse by naming it Renesmee. It's my favorite thing, especially when we come to, like, like your name, where I'm like, you got Renesmee. The reason that everyone thinks it's funny is not only is Renesmee dumb, but, like, it's an amalgam of Renee, which is Bella's mom, and Esme, which is Edward's mom, by making Renesmee. I just think it's fun and like proof that Stephanie Meyer isn't just a white woman. She's a white woman.
I do think you might have ruined my name for me when
Sorry.
you told me, because I remember I was telling. So the backstory is my name Kaylynne is a real name, despite what my brothers told me growing up. It is a real name. There are other people named Kaylynne, but no one spells it the way that it is spelled for me. And the reason that's spelled the way that it's spelled for me is because Kay is my grandma's middle name and Lynn is my mom's middle name. So that, yeah, I got Renesmee. And I've never thought of my name the same since.
I'm here to ruin more lives. At one point, Bella becomes a vampire. There are some evil vampires. They defeat the evil vampires. There's also a werewolf battle. The end. Like, we all got the basics. I'm not about to tell you, like, and so in the first book, this happens. Like, that's kind of not what this is here for. If you're interested in that, go involve yourself more in Twilight. I'm more interested in, like, the culture surrounding it, the movies themselves, and what we can extrapolate from it as, like, a newer, fresher perspective now that, like, over a decade has passed since, not over a decade.
Oh my God.
Over
exactly
a decade. Exactly. Here we go. Since the last movie premiered. Oh, no, that's movie premiered in 2012, but I feel like the phenomenon died down in 2013, and officially people were done talking about it. But it was just such a global cultural phenomenon that I feel like now, with like having a decade to kind of ruminate, to marinate, that we kind of look back on all of these little bits and extrapolate more meaning from them. I'm going to be your professor today. I have a degree in twilology. And I went down a fucking rabbit hole, so I am going to take you with me. So, first, I'm going to vouch for Twilight. There are plenty of flaws within these books, these movies, this phenomenon, and I'm going to get into those flaws first, but I feel like in general, what I feel like I have to do is defend Twilight, just because for a period of time, at least on internet circles, Twilight was considered, I swear to God, like, the most hyperbolic bad thing that humanity had ever done. Like, being in middle school, or like later elementary school, but middle school mostly, like during like the height of the Twilight craze, it was a fucking battlefield, and people treated Twilight like it was the end of all civilization, very similar to how people hated Justin Bieber at the time. Like, it was just so over the top that I feel like I have to vouch for it a little bit before I completely dunk on it, because it has enough dunking, you know? So, pros, because there are pros. It's a meme machine, especially the first movie, but later in subsequent movies, like, the quotability of the first Twilight movie is actually insane. I'm going to go through some of them, my favorite ones. First of all, it's the fluorescence. It's so sublime. Battle scars. Where, first, like, one of the actors won a Razzie for his performance. It's when Bella was like, how'd you get all of these? And Jasper, in his, like, quote unquote southern drawl, just like speaks out of the corner of his mouth and just goes, battle scars. The entire baseball scene from the first movie, the iconic, you imprinted on my daughter, she's a baby. It's not like that. You think Edward would let me live if it was? I'm still considering it. You nicknamed my daughter after the Loch Ness monster. You better hold on tight, Spider Monkey. No. Bella, where the hell have you been, Loca? This is the skin of a killer, Bella. I'm going, I know what you are. Jasper's entire fucking face in the first movie, he's supposed to be, as far as the books go, like the most freshly turned vampire, but in the movies they were just like, act like you are going insane. And so for the entire first movie, they got the actor that they got to play Jasper is just sitting there like, he has bug eyes the entire fucking thing. My favorite is this bit where, like, you first meet the Cullens. They're at the lunch table, but either the prop master or the actors themselves were trying to show off that they don't eat food. And so the food that they got to eat for these people, I got two screenshots. One is, it appears that Emmett is just eating 5 hard-boiled eggs in a Ziploc bag. And this one, first of all, there's a single baby bell carrot just raw dogging it on the table. There's an opened can of Pepsi. There's just a fucking opened banana, again, smushed down on the table. And also she's eating in the actual screen grab, which is supposed to be funny. This is the Jasper's face I was talking about.
Oh, okay.
Alice's flipped out hair that I swear to God every kid with a pixie cut thought their hair was going to look like, and then it suddenly didn't look like that. Yeah, Yeah, it's just like it's an entirely quotable meme machine, and we just can't thank it enough for that. The fact that the entire first movie is blue doesn't get enough credit. Oh my god, I completely steamrolled. I was literally going to ask you what you thought about Twilight before we started, and I didn't. So before I go any further, once we get outside of why Twilight is funny in like a meme, ironic type of way, I want to get into the actual things that I like, and then whatever. But first, Kaylynne.
So I felt very called out in the beginning because I was unfortunately one of the individuals in middle school who was like, I'm too cool for Twilight. Like, only stupid little bitches like Twilight, and I'm not one of them. And I also thought the same thing about Justin Bieber. But for some reason, The Hunger Games was different.
Oh, yeah, it was different.
Because I think... Actually, no, this is why. Because The Hunger Games was beloved by both men and women.
Yeah.
So that's why it was different. Yeah. So that's how you knew it was of quality, was because boys liked it too.
Yep.
Or at least that's what my little 12-year-old brain thought. So I have not read any of the books. I didn't actually watch any of the movies until I think I was like in college maybe, or maybe even late high school. But it was very much one of those things where I was like, no, it's stupid. Like, why would I waste my time with it? I don't understand why people like it. But I never even gave it a chance. Look at me, hypocrite. So that was kind of my experience with Twilight, like during the height of its craze. I was also, oh my God. Okay, actually, no, this is my Twilight experience. So when I was in middle school, I was like, oh my God, Twilight is so stupid. But if I had to be on Team Edward or Team Jacob, obviously, because he's the hot one.
Taylor Lautner.
However, and I was very like stern with that. I was like, no, like Taylor Lautner is the hot one. Why would you like this pale vampire? But then when I watched the movies for the first time, I was like, oh, I understand now. And I remember watching the first movie and being like, no, yeah, I understand why you would be Team Edward.
The fucking wig they put Taylor Lautner in the first movie. They should be tried for their crimes.
It's bad. Yeah, but I don't know. I don't really have that many thoughts. I have seen the first one a few times now.
It's the most memeable one. That's why people always put that one on. No one wants to be like, do you want to watch Eclipse with me? People like, do you want to watch Twilight with me?
How many are there? How many movies?
Let's see.
Because the last one was like a 2-parter, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think I watched the second part.
5.
5? Oh my God. I've seen maybe 3 of them.
Okay.
Yeah. So
spoilers.
So my education is very base level.
So that's actually one of the things that I liked is the difference between, and I'm gonna barely touch on this honestly, but one of the main criticisms of the last book is that Stephanie Meyer the author, she writes a lot of things, but a coherent plot is definitely not one of them. So what happened was she's like, I was building to this big fight, and then I realized like this fight can't go through because if they fight, then like there's no way that my characters could win, so they won't. And so the entire series is building up to this giant showdown that never happens because the villains are there, the heroes are here, they're about to have this like Avengers Civil War style fight, and then at the end Alice is like talks them down and they all go home. It's very anticlimactic, and a lot of people were like, Stephanie, you're the author.
Girly, what's up?
You can figure this out. So what the movies did, and why like, oh my God, I would give anything to be in that theater when they released, because they did an adaptational change. So in the books, basically what happens is Alice, one of the Cullens, one of her powers is like future vision, basically. So she's like, so in the book she just walked over and like put her hands on the leader's face and was like, this is what will happen if you fight us. And he's like, oh, I see now that this would lead us to our destruction. We must walk away. In the movie, it's like, what does that vision look like? And we don't know that it's an Alice vision until afterwards. So what the movie does, Breaking Dawn, Part 2, they don't tell you it's a vision. You see like the hero's here, the bad guy's here, they're about to fight each other, and then they start fighting. And you're like, oh, whoa. And like a lot of fans were like, what are they doing? They're fighting. People die. Carlisle's head gets taken off. It's bloody. People's like, your faves keep dying. And the screams of agony with like teen girls and moms who like thought that they were just watching like their favorite characters get ripped apart and lose, and then suddenly it cuts to Alice and everyone's alive and she's like, and that's why we can't fight.
Oh.
And I'm like, to be in that theater where like the screams of agony, and honestly, like if we're being kind of honest, even though like it must have been horrible and like scarring to be like, oh my gosh, my favorite's head is taken off, like it had to have been a little bit exhilarating, right? Because I don't think people realized how, if you were a fan of Twilight, how anticlimactic the battle was until you realize that like, oh wait, this is actually kind of exciting. It's like when you watch Avengers Infinity War and your favorites are falling into dust. It hurts and it's sad, but like honestly it's like, ooh, wow, consequences. Like actual bad things happening that like aren't immediately like fixed and wished away. This is actually kind of exciting. Like, and then it all got retconned at the end, but that's one of the things I also like. Moving on, a lot of people were like, hey, if Edward's a vampire, how does he impregnate Bella? There's a canon explanation for this, and that's that Edward's penis is full of venom, and that's how he was able to impregnate Bella. His venom replaced his blood, and that's why he was able to get an erection, and his sperms are still alive in cryogenic sleep. Edward has a venom penis. I think that's funny.
I do distinctly remember the sex scene in, is that the second movie? Or like the third?
They don't have sex until after they're married.
Yes.
So that was the first Breaking Dawn.
Oh my god, then maybe I have seen all of them. No, but it's just like he breaks the headboard. It's a lot. That's it. That's all I have to say about that.
And that Bella's birth scene is just honestly so gory and horrifying to read that it kind of slays. Like, one of the, and I will get into this later, but one of the selling points of Twilight is that it's very PG. It's like very, like, every time they even kiss, it cuts to the wall. Like, when they have sex in the books, it like pans to the window immediately, and they have like, you know, the cover pulled over them, and like it's very like for all ages. And then randomly like spurts of genuine horrifying shit will happen, and you're like, oh, whoa. And one of them was just describing like Bella's birth and overall pregnancy, and it's very gory and it slays. Speaking of Bella's pregnancy, the fact that Bella just fucking drinks blood from styrofoam cups while she's pregnant because her child is a vampire is just so funny to me, because like there's no direct line from the umbilical cord to the stomach of the mother. The nutrients have to be absorbed by the bloodstream and then transferred through the placenta. How is Bella going to digest blood? Like, was an IV too obvious of a solution? So blood slushies was the more obvious solution? It's so camp. And like two things of, because I know a lot of people, you know, bash on Stephanie for adding like vampire lore, like they can go outside, but they sparkle in the sunlight, and, you know, other like kind of lamer things to the overall lore of vampires. But this idea that vampires like have to breathe in public, otherwise they look normal, but like they breathe, but there's like a quote, breathing but with no relief tied to the action. Like, they have to breathe, but there's not that instinctual relief of getting oxygen because they don't need to. And it's like that idea of like going through the human routines out of habit, but not out of necessity. That's a fun concept. And the second is like this idea that vampires are communally raising a baby, and they don't even buy a crib for the baby because they don't need to sleep, so they can each take turns holding her. That's a cute idea. That's about it. And also, the soundtrack for these movies is so unironically good. It makes me wonder, like, what Twilight had to, like, slip under the table money-wise to get this awesome, incredible, like, production together. Each Twilight soundtrack, unironically, is incredible. The vibes, the, like, passion in it, it's giving Evanescence. Like, it's just, it's so good. And in general, like, the vibes is again in the first movie, because that's again the one that I've seen the most, but throughout the franchise, just like these vibes of like living in a small town with pine forests and wildflower fields. It's cloudy, it's rainy, there's an ocean on the coast, there's these bookstores and cafes and these gazebos with twinkle lights. Like, I want to go to there. It's just a good vibe. It's a good vibe to turn your brain off. And on like my general Twilight journey was, I was also one of those girls that was just like, you know, I'm better than this and whatever. And one of my friends called me out. They're like, have you read Twilight? And I'm like, no. And they're like, then how can you judge it? And I was gagged. So I did read them. And so I have that knowledge now. I read the series. It didn't take me too long. And I'm like, this isn't my thing, but at least I understand where people are coming from, and no one can come for me now. And then I watched the movies, like, I'm sure through sleepovers through the years. So I've also watched all of them. But I've seen the first one the most. It's the most iconic. It's the blue one. I wish they all were blue. I'll keep it a buck. So those are all the pros that I got. Before we get to the cons, I want to get to the misunderstood section, because there is plenty in Twilight that is misunderstood by the popular consciousness at large. And the first bullet point is, let girls enjoy things. Like, I'm going to get into the actual cons of Twilight, but let's not pretend that most of my criticisms that I'll go into with Twilight were why people hated it with such vitriol when the Twilight craze was at its highest. At most, you got this is an unhealthy relationship and Bella isn't a good role model, which is fair. But most of why people hated Twilight was because it was what teen girls liked. It's what those sheltered moms liked. It was what those religious girls liked. Like, it became the internet's punching bag for daring to be dumb and feminine and, like, unironically about romance and falling deep into passion, when like dumb and masculine things like Transformers, Fast and Furious, other like dude bro movies, those aren't considered high art either, but at least people are like, call them dumb but fun. And like, that's what Twilight is. It's dumb and it's bad and it's unhealthy, but at least it's a good time. It's fun. But Twilight was treated as like the worst thing that mankind had ever done. It was like, in general, I'm not like reinventing the wheel or anything by saying that, like, in general, society hates what teen girls like. Like, we don't like boy bands. We don't like anything that teen girls find appealing, or was like, that's dumb and frivolous and shallow and not at all depth. And I fell for the most obvious bait ever, because I was a Harry Potter kid, and there was this like imaginary culture war that I thought was happening online, where like Twilight readers were attacking Harry Potter readers for saying Twilight was better. Looking back, it is the most obvious fake things. Like, I'm going to show you a picture of something I unironically fucking fell for.
Oh, no.
This picture.
Oh, goodness.
It is, like, in Comic Sans, by the way. Harry Potter copied Twilight. Jacob Black, Sirius Black. Sirius is spelled wrong. Stephanie Meyer creates an original character with the last name Black. He is part wolf and referred to by many times as half dog. He transforms and is very dangerous when he's in dog form. Sound familiar? By the way, Rowling doesn't even cast a black actor to play Sirius Black. A bit racist? I thought so too. And it's like, the actor that, like, the JPEG they got for the actor that plays Sirius Black in the Harry Potter movies has like a hot pink mustache drawn on him, and I'm just like, I fell for that. I thought this was real, so I would like write paragraph after paragraph being like, first of all, that's not even applicable, because I talk mad shit for like old people getting wrapped up into like obvious Photoshop things, but looking back, I'm like, bitch. These were obviously Harry Potter fans making these PowerPoints to make Twilight fans look bad, when for most of what I knew, Twilight fans just kind of stayed in their lane and liked what they liked. I remember even when I was reading the Twilight books, I had to hide it at school. Like, I had to make those like fake book jackets, because I knew that I would get fucking ripped alive if they saw like the Twilight covers on my desk. Like, and I also hate this idea that like every girl-oriented media has to have a role model as a protagonist. And if the protagonist of your girl media isn't like a girl wash your face girl boss, then she loses all respectability as a person. Because that was one of the things I actually kind of liked about Twilight, is like no one pretended that Bella was like a good person or that she was like someone to look up to. Even Stephanie Meyer in interviews is like, don't use Bella as a role model. She's just the protagonist. Like, she makes mistakes. And I find someone who's kind of a mess to be a little bit more relatable than someone who always has their shit together and always says the right thing and does the right thing and isn't allowed to fall apart and be messy and be depressed and be depressing and be embarrassing. Like, it's kind of refreshing to have a protagonist that isn't confined within like the, you know, good role model box that's a lot of girl-oriented media for some reason has to have a perfect role model for little girls to latch onto. Otherwise, it's like not worth their time. And as for Team Jacob, I'm about to rope you in. Jacob was good, god damn it. In the first two books especially, he actually gave a shit about Bella's interests, and he made her feel better. He was a great communicator. He was funny. He was loyal. The two of them had like a natural rapport, and Bella seemed like she could have an amazing life with him. But no. Not only is Jacob supposed to represent like the normal life that she's giving up in exchange for the messy but ultimately true love with Edward, but Stephanie had to assassinate Jacob's character come Eclipse, because she realized, this isn't confirmed, but like we all know this is true, that like Edward is Stephanie Meyer's dream man, and the reception for the first two books was like, oh my god, Team Jacob, and she's like, what? No. And then she looked back, she's like, oh damn it, Because, like,
Made him too good.
I'm going to go deeper into this in, like, the cons section, but, like, Edward kind of sucks for a lot of this series, that she's like, damn it, how do I make people suddenly not like Jacob? And once Jacob goes full werewolf, becomes rude, entitled, snarky, cruel, and was retconned to have this, like, his amazing behavior in the first 2 books be an active show he was putting on for the purpose of getting with Bella eventually. He kisses her non-consensually, and the fact that he was just, like, the nice guy waiting around hoping one day she would understand, and then when she chose the jerk guy over him, he went full Andrew Tate. Biceps and all. Like, he kisses her, and she knows that he has super strength, so she can't fight him off, so she just goes limp. And when he pulls away, she goes to punch him, and she breaks her hand on his face. And then when she tells her dad about it, Charlie is like, all right, Jacob, let's go. My boy shot his shot. Well, she has, like, a fucking broken hand because she punched the Man of Steel for kissing her without her consent. And it's like...
Interesting choice, Charlie.
Team Jacob used to mean something. We used to be a proper country. And the fact that, like, every Cullen sibling is more interesting than the leads. That's an ongoing joke, is that most of the Cullens' backstories are just so captivating. Like, Rosalie's backstory, where she was engaged to a rich man, and then, like, the night before their wedding, her fiancé and his friends get drunk and, like, implied to have, trigger warning, gang raped her and left her for dead. And so when she's saved as a vampire, she kills all of them with an axe dressed up in her wedding gown. Tell me that that's not iconic. Just Alice in general. Boss move. Like, I think I have all of their backstories pulled up. Alice, she had premonitions before she was a vampire. That's, like, a bonus, that she had, like, her future vision before she was a vampire that led many in town to believe that she was a witch. After her mother was murdered and her father remarried, Alice escaped to a nearby town. There, her father had her committed to an asylum where she befriended Carlisle. Yeah, so basically she has, like, the most manic pixie dream girl background. Meanwhile, our 2 leads are like, we're in love. No, you're in love. At most, Edward was, like, a victim of the Spanish flu. Who gives a shit?
When the Cullen siblings are literally just the American Girl dolls grown up. Like, the horrors that they had to go through.
And then it's even weirder because, like, they're all mates, but they can't say that they're all mates because their cover story is that they're all related. Yeah. So it's like, what does this town think is, like, the incestuous cult down the road with, like, this incredible amount of money? You cannot deny there is an undeniable sexy tension of a boy loving a girl so much that he resists killing her, but she's designed just for him, so he has to always have this willpower of steel. That's sexy. I'm sorry. Don't lie. I'll say what everyone else is too afraid to say these days.
What the media is afraid.
And also, like, I can't think of a lot of other, like, YA romance that's this PG that celebrates taking things slow. Like, yeah, it's kind of fun to poke fun at, and I will poke fun at it later, but, like, the message of Twilight is that, like, he doesn't coerce her into anything. If anything, she coerces him, which is another thing that, like, the YA protagonist wants to have sex, which is, like, not something you see very often. Mm-hmm. I mean, she can want it, but, like, it can't be her idea because then she'll be a slut. But, like, any given second, Bella is like, Edward, I want to have sex with you so bad. And Edward's like, no, we can't. Like, not until we're married. How often can you say that in, like, where there's no underlying pressure to do things that the girl isn't comfortable with, that the guy isn't comfortable with? That's very refreshing. And even then, like, because he's so, like, restraint filled, they can, like, holding hands is a lot for him. So it's, like, the most, like, safe way to experience romance, especially if you're targeting your YA series at tweens who don't know what their sexuality is yet. It's very, like, baby's first romance where there's no pressure, where there's no, like, scary feelings of sexuality that you're not ready yet. Even when they do have sex, they pan to the window. They don't tell you anything. It's just very, like, comforting in that way. And Mormon, we'll get into that too also. And it's also that fantasy of having that super hot guy that's totally out of your league be biologically obsessed with you, meaning that Bella as a character never has to worry about Edward replacing her, never has to worry about keeping Edward entertained, otherwise he'll leave her for, like, a more younger, prettier woman. Like, there's no worried of keeping the hot, popular guy interested in you. He's just always going to be obsessed with you no matter what you do. So she has security in that way, which is another, like, wish fulfillment fantasy that you don't see very often. And that one scene in New Moon where Edward leaves and Bella stays in one place as the months fly by, like, tell me that didn't hit. In the book, when it's that Edward leaves and the next 4 pages are blank except for the months. So like December, January, because like it's nothing. Like tell me that doesn't hit.
Yeah.
Especially again, like let women rot. Like women aren't allowed to like waste away in YA that much. They're not allowed to feel the depth of their depression the way that Bella is allowed to feel in hers, and that can be kind of fucking cool. And okay, to be fair, Bella has no sense of boundaries, but when Edward crosses a line, she doesn't just take his shit. If he says not to go somewhere, she will go. If he tells her not to do something or don't look into something, she will do it anyway. She doesn't just take his word for things. And like, again, don't get me wrong, she is so obsessed with Edward that it's worrisome, and every single thought she has revolves around him, and I'm barely being hyperbolic. Like, once Edward is introduced, you only really get to know Bella sans Edward for like the first 2 chapters of the book or the first 5 minutes of the movie, and after that she's just an Edward devotion machine. But even then, she still has some agency, and they're allowed to disagree. She's not just a complete doormat, which I didn't expect, and I did find nice. Now, all that being said, cons. There are a lot of cons. I'm going to get into them now. And we get it. Like, this can be, like, you know, your problematic fave, your guilty pleasure. But, like, and I hate, you know, I don't use these cons as an excuse to keep shitting on Twilight. Like, I hope I've sold it that it can be, like, a dumb, goofy thing. But, like, it's our dumb, goofy thing. And you can still have fun doing it. However, I don't want to make it seem like all of the criticism on Twilight was just sexism. That was most of it. Especially at its heyday. Because no one actually wanted to take this series seriously enough to critique it the way that what it contained, more like what it represented. But these flaws are still there, and I think to ignore them would also be kind of disingenuous to the franchise as a whole. So, I know I said that all of the Cullens have a more interesting backstory than the leads, and I did mean that, except for Jasper. He was a Confederate soldier. And what the fuck is it with authors finding Confederate vampires so appealing? Like, the fucking brothers in the Vampire Diaries were in the Confederacy. Most of the Vampire Diaries take place in the South, and they're all about Southern heritage and, like, immortal vampires. The fucking Anne Rice vampires are also Confederates. Like, I think it might have something to do with, like, that old Southern charm, like, old Southern heritage thing. But, like, there is just now so many Confederate vampires, and it's like, no one talks about the fact that Jasper was part of the Confederacy. Why was he a part of the Confederacy? No one has any follow-up questions. No one is angry. No one. He was just part of the Confederacy, and that's framed as being okay. There's even a scene in the movie where it's like, no, because he was saving, like, children and moms when he got bit by a vampire. It's like, well, he was fighting for the South. What are you saying to me? And again, I am not going to reinvent the wheel and say that, did you know that Edward and Bella are not a healthy relationship? I'm not about to blow minds. I'm not about to... However, I want to list some of my least favorite things that Edward has done. He stalks her. He listens to all of the conversations that she has using his vampire hearing. The infamous "I like to watch you sleep" thing. That's not exactly framed as a bad thing. He is constantly condescending. He's very dismissive of her feelings or her agency. Couple specific examples. When he first leaves her in New Moon, because he does that thing where he's like, "You'll be better off without me, babe. I'll just disappear." He steals back the mixed CDs that he gave her, all pictures of him, and her car radio that the Cullens did buy her for her birthday. He does rip that out of her car in Eclipse. He applies to colleges on her behalf without her knowing about it. He restricts what information she gets about the vampire world by making everyone she knows comply with his cover story. He disables her truck so she can't visit Jacob because he told her not to. He, like, rips out the fucking engine. And when he catches her having visited Jacob anyway, he follows her all the way home. And, like, she drives the truck. It's fixed by this point. She drives the truck. He drives his Volvo. And he follows behind her bumper to bumper the whole way there.
Oh, my God.
As, like, to make her feel bad for leaving. And to be fair, right after this in Eclipse, like, that's when Stephanie Meyer was like, oh, no, people are team Jacob. This must be remedied. So he makes Jacob to be, like, a fucking incel. And suddenly in Eclipse, after this, Edward is like the best boyfriend. He's suddenly thoughtful and compromising and trusting and kind. This is an odd choice to make 3 books in. And then abandon once Breaking Dawn happens because once Bella is confirmed pregnant, he starts setting up an abortion, even though she is begging him not to. So much so that Bella calls Rosalie for backup since she knows she'll take her side and knows that he will force her to get an abortion unless she tells someone about it. You know, there's just also just extreme codependency issues. And, like, I get it. Like, to a tween, it can be so romantic. Like, without you, I have a hole in my chest. I feel complete when you're around. But, like, within days of meeting, if these two are apart for any length of time, they are one sigh away from just hanging themselves from a noose. Like, it goes beyond, like, the typical, like, YA trope of, like, when you're here, it hurts, I can't breathe. But if he's like, hey, I'm gonna go, like, hunting with my friends really quick, she's like, all right, cool. And I'm in, like, loaded gun in the mouth. Like, it's intense. And again, like, the fact that Bella and Edward are unhealthy isn't groundbreaking. But yeah, it's all about the framing. None of this is framed like it's bad. None of these are framed like these are character traits that Edward needs to work on. And it's just one of the like selling points of Twilight is its pure unadulterated romanticism, and that can be alluring, and you can get so swept up in the fact that it's just all so romantic that it's hard to take a step back and be like, oh wait, that was all kind of fucked up, because none of it is framed like it's not fucked up. Lee. So I think maybe it's Lee or Leah, I don't know, it's Leah. She's a minor character in the movies because they know that they did her so fucking dirty in the books. Do you know anything about this character?
No.
All right, are you ready? I want to see your face.
Yes.
So I'm gonna call her Leah. So Leah was the werewolf leader, and so fast lore. I'm throwing a lot at you. I realize this now. In Jacob's werewolf pack, Sam is their alpha. That was not too bad. So Leah was Sam's original partner before he became a werewolf, and once he became a werewolf, he imprinted on her cousin Emily. And so he dumps her for her cousin, and she's just supposed to be okay with this. So later, Leah becomes a werewolf, the only female werewolf they've ever had, and she becomes ostracized within her pack since she's an enigma, and they all share a hive mind of emotions, and so they can all, like, hear what each other says and feel what each other is feeling, and they're all tired of her being in a bad mood. Because another thing about werewolf lore in this movie is once you are in a pack, you become a helpless master to your alpha. Like, you can't obey the alpha's orders. In this case, the alpha is her ex.
Ew.
And later, this was where it gets even more fucked up. Later, we find that becoming a werewolf apparently makes you infertile, which is not a problem that any of the male werewolves have, by the way. But, like, her period stop, she can't get pregnant. Mm-hmm. And she describes herself as not being a complete woman because of it. Book quote, "The horror," this is when she was talking to Jacob, but this is all, like, Jacob's perspective. "The horror. What was she now? Had her body changed because she become a werewolf? Or had she become a werewolf because her body was wrong? The only female werewolf in the history of forever. Was that because she wasn't as female as she should be? None of us had wanted to deal with that breakdown." Literally everyone in the book was like, damn, that's unfortunate, but true. And that goes unquestioned by everyone.
Oh, okay.
After that, she just kind of fucks off into the woods, never to be seen or heard from again.
Damn.
So you're like, hey, Stephanie, what the fuck was that?
So what was that about?
Stephanie?
What was that about, Stephanie?
What the fuck? Another thing is, like, this always gets me. So Bella and Edward's entire relationship across the saga. So we're talking 4 books, 5 movies, about 11 months.
No.
Meeting.
No.
Breaking up, meeting again, getting married, having a baby, turning into a vampire. We're talking about 11 months. And then afterwards, when she becomes a vampire, she fucks off, never to be seen from again by any of her friends and family. So for all that they know, she got in a shotgun wedding because she was pregnant. They even make a joke about it. Anna Kendrick's character, which everyone forgets that Anna Kendrick is in these movies. Even Anna Kendrick forgets that Anna Kendrick is in the Twilight movies. She's like, do you think Bella is showing? And her friends were like, oh, she's not pregnant. She goes, oh, right. Who else is getting married right after high school? So from the town's perspective is that this young girl came into town, got pregnant immediately, got married, and then fucked off to the random cult, and they don't see her again because she needs a couple years before she's normal, and can get acclimated into human society because she's still a fresh vampire and she can be trusted amongst the mortals. So she's probably never going to see her friends again. But that's worth it. That's not ever described as like a bad thing or ever really described ever.
That's crazy. Sorry, the extended period of silence was my mouth hanging open in shock. Wow, I did not realize that. I thought it was years. I was like, no, this is happening over like 3 or 4 years at least.
Because one of the things too, and we're going to get into a lot of influences, one of the things that I disliked the most is why Bella is so adamant about Edward turning her all the time. Like she's literally like tugging at his sleeve, being like, no, please, turn me. Because she has a thing, like a conflict about being older than him forever. Mm-hmm. So she's like, you're 17, I'm 17. You have to do it now before I turn 18 because then I'll be older than you and gross and you're not going to find me attractive anymore. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, bitch. So yeah, and also like that's just in general like Stephanie Meyer's writing style is she doesn't do a lot of flash forwards. Why her books are so thick and why people think it has to be years is because the books are so big and so long. But like no, she just kind of it's almost like a week to week, day to day, hour to hour. There's not a second of these people's lives that you're not in on. Mm-hmm. So really, it's not that long of a time.
That's crazy. Wow.
Eep. My least favorite thing. Okay, so the Quileute tribe is the tribe that Jacob and the rest of the werewolf pack are subscribed to in the Twilight franchise. They are an actual Native American tribe based in the Washington area that Stephanie appropriated and rewrote to fit her teen supernatural romance novels. She did not consult anyone about anything, nor did she give any profit to them, even afterwards, and used them and leaned into very racist stereotypes to portray them as the other in her novel about literal fucking vampires. Like, she didn't just make one up. She just saw that there was an actual native reservation in the same place as her romance novel, and instead of being inspired by them, she just name drops them and implies that not only are there werewolves, but she takes their actual folklore about wolves in their spirit world and dumbing it down for her and her audience's consumption by implying that not only are they all werewolves, but they also do other fucked up shit, like imprinting. It is going to get its own thing because I've never seen something so horrifying framed as something so good, especially, again, like, I know I just said that not everything has to be, like, framed as good for kids, but, like, this is something that's literally so fucking dangerous for a youth audience that I fucking need to talk about it. It's so bad. So, first of all, assigning the idea of imprinting to an actual real-life native tribe is so unbelievably fucked up, especially when I get into what it actually is. So, essentially, the way that they describe it is imprinting is a sudden connection between two people in which you are officially soul bonded and you can't fight it. So a lot of people imply that, like, no, it doesn't have to be romantic. It can sometimes be platonic. It's their explanation of what soulmates are, is what imprinting is. And it's basically like we are soul connected. And this is the application of it in the books. So Sam, remember Alpha Leader Sam, mm-hmm. He imprinted on Emily, which was Leah's cousin. She didn't accept him. This was the more lore talking about imprinting, and then I'll get into it. So I got all this from the Twilight Wiki. So Sam imprinted on Emily. It's not a two-way street, by the way. Just because you imprint on someone does not mean that someone is automatically agrees that you will be soul connected to them. It's not an equal exchange. It's just a werewolf will imprint on you. And you can use them however you want. Oh. It's not an equal exchange. So in this case, Sam imprinted on Emily, and Emily goes, hey, you're dating my cousin. Fuck off.
Yeah.
I'm not going to accept that because you're literally in a relationship with my cousin. Even after she found out about his new wolf form and his abilities, she still brushed him off, trying to convince him to return to Leah. And this went on for a while when Sam visited her daily, and she rejected him every time. Sam, outraged, lost control of himself, phased into a werewolf, and scarred her badly enough that it looks like she was mauled by a bear, and that is their only plausible cover story. Bella describes the wound as 3 deep scars that run alongside the right side of her face and distort her features, pulling down the corner of her eye and her mouth. As time went on, Emily...
This is Emily?
Yep.
Okay.
Emily finally accepted Sam after realizing her feelings for him, and then after getting to know him better, despite her initial attitude towards him. She later tells Leah that she and Sam are together, which Leah had counted on not happening. So Emily ended up being the caretaker of Sam and his pack, cooking, cleaning, and finding clothes for them. That's all from the wiki. She wasn't even dating Sam when the abuse occurred. He maimed his girlfriend's cousin. The maimed girl is then convinced to not only lie for him to avoid him committing suicide because he did what he did, but then falls in love with him after the attack. Emily is not a werewolf. There is no magic connection on her end. She falls in love and moves in with her cousin's boyfriend after he maims her face and body for rejecting him repeatedly, something that is clearly shown to everyone in the tribe. But it was in Sam's blood. He couldn't really help himself. It was in his DNA. It's in his nature. Sudden horrific realization. So basically the reason that, spoilers for, I'm sure everyone knows this, but basically Stephanie Meyer wrote herself into a corner why she brought up imprinting at all is because she wanted a happy ending for everybody. But she wrote Jacob to be too devoted to Bella in the first place. So what are you going to do when you have... It was less of a love triangle because Bella never led Jacob on. She was very clear, like, I don't have feelings for you. I'm in love with Edward. Yeah. I'll always be in love with Edward. I'm sorry. Like, this just won't work. And he just always kept pining after her anyway. Yeah.
So with him, there's no takesies backsies with imprinting.
No.
Like, once it's done, you, like, that's it.
Yes. Completely involuntary. You have no shot.
Cool.
And so they wanted to have not only Jacob be a happy ending, but to have no one be upset that Jacob and Bella don't end up together. If Jacob's assassination character wasn't enough for you to not want them to be together. So she devised this incredibly smart solution of implying that the only reason that Jacob ever fell for Bella in the first place was that he sensed that his real soulmate was in her eggs somewhere.
No.
And then
That's horrible.
Renesmee is born, and then Jacob locks eyes with Renesmee and imprints on her immediately as a baby. And so initially Bella is like, hey man, that's my daughter and a baby. And he goes, it's not my choice. And then she's then framed as being irrational. She comes around to it. Because you imprinted on my daughter. Because, he can't help it. And she'll be protected forever. So not only did they say that Jacob was never actually into Bella in the first place. He was just into her eggs. And they don't say this, but that also implies that for like a week straight, Jacob was like, why am I in love with Edward? His sperm is in there. Sperm didn't go away. And that Jacob can't love anyone else because he's imprinted on her daughter. So everyone wins, right?
Do they?
Horrific realization is that you could say the reason they could never work, Jacob and Bella, is that if Team Jacob won out and he and Bella had a child together, the egg that drew Bella to Jacob would be the one that got fertilized, maybe, and then would Jacob then instinctively imprint on his own daughter? See, that's why they couldn't work. There is a scene in Breaking Dawn where Quill, a 17-year-old werewolf, is hanging out with his imprinted, a 3-year-old girl. They play horsey together, they play dress up, and he fully plans on marrying her one day. It doesn't make it any better that they say that they wait until the imprinted is 18, sorry. They're like, no, you don't get it. We wait till they're 18 to actually do anything with them. This is a quote from the book. Quill will be the best, kindest big brother any kid ever had. There isn't a toddler on the planet that will be more carefully looked after than that little girl will be. And then, when she's older and needs a friend, he'll be more understanding, trustworthy, and reliable than anyone else she knows. And then, when she's grown up, they'll be as happy as Emily and Sam.
Where's a hammer? Where's a hammer that I can bash my head in with?
And I hate saying this because everyone is lobbying this against gay people right now, but this is grooming. This is literal, actual grooming. And you can't even justify by being like, it's just an unbreakable bond. It doesn't have to steer romantic, because in the entire saga, we've never shown an example of imprinting not turning romantic. Mm-hmm. Because it's framed as like, why would she pick anyone else? Like, he is anything that he makes himself into anything that she could ever possibly want. And I remember girls in my grade talking about how nice this was and how they wish it had happened to them.
Gasp. No.
And again, like I said about imprinting, is entirely out of the werewolf's control. It is completely involuntary and biologically irresistible. Even if you were wanting to run away from who you imprinted on, your body wouldn't let you leave. It's like a leech. It's like a parasite. It takes over your brain, it takes over your body. You have no choice. You become a physical and emotional slave from first sight, and there's nothing you can do about it. And with many imprints being on kids and babies, so many werewolves actively want to fight it because they're like, this is fucking gross.
Yeah.
But they are just stuck with it. Did I mention that this is an actual fucking tribe? A Quileute tribe are real actual people. So
Stephanie, I'm shaking my finger at you. No.
I've just never seen such an explicit like practice of grooming be used so romantically before. Like, they're not even denying that that's exactly what it is. And like, yeah, they acknowledge it, that it seems messed up, and like that's why there's the iconic you imprinted on my daughter, and he's like, it's not like that. I mean, it will be, but not
in
yet.
18 years.
In 18 years, and maybe even faster, because Renesmee grows at an accelerated rate because she's half vampire, so she's already basically a person.
Yeah, I forgot about that one.
And yeah, you can say all you want that this is a little messed up, but then if you're convinced of it, that's not enough. And it's just like, even the most diehard Twilight fans, they try their best to be like, what if it's just going to be like a Big Brother thing forever? It's like, there's some like mentions in the book because like some elders in their tribe think that it must be for like mating purposes, to like your werewolf brain picks up which mate will be the most fertile to pass on the werewolf genes. Like, no one ever considers that this is never going to become a sexual thing eventually. It's just kind of an understood thing. So that's imprinting in general. Like, again, I cannot believe that she put that in there. But more about the Quileute tribe. So they are a tiny sovereign nation that now has roughly 2,000 members. The Quileute people are a real tribe of Native Americans whose cultural heritage provided the very loose inspiration for Twilight's werewolf tribe of the same name. Their real reservation is used as a setting for a lot of New Moon's action, so they did film also there. Yeah, the tribe's actual symbology and culture were mined for inspiration when Meyer was writing her werewolf characters, and native mythology surrounding skinwalkers provides the backbone for Twilight's version of lycanthropy. Yeah. Twilight changed a lot of vampire lore to suit its story, and its series was equally happy to take a lot of creative license with the Quileute myths. However, as the tribe themselves have noted, the Twilight series making changes to their myths that led many fans to conflate the real-life Quileute with their fictional counterparts. The myths of the Quileute people do not mention vampires or cold ones, and rather than transforming into wolves, the first two tribe members were transformed into from people into wolves according to someone else's mythology. So like, it's not like a complete stretch, but like, that's a real tribe.
Yeah,
they don't have
you shouldn't do
tattoos. And the Quileute people aren't happy about the reality being so misrepresented.
Shocker.
Yeah, no shit. And oh God, there's just, yeah, it's a lot. And in general, having your only people of color in your entire story be Native Americans who live on reservations, who all have a long history of domestic violence, other forms of violence, who all adhere to a group hive mind, who are always referred to having more primitive lifestyles, who groom, who have quick tempers, who are hot-headed and less refined than your perfect rich family with their perfect glass house, manicured European hobbies, fancy cars, and classy tastes. Not good. Not good. Yes, both Edward and Jacob are sexualized, but which one is always shirtless? Which one is always, like, exotified, meat-headed, tattooed, shirtless, in tattered clothes, versus Edward, who always has, like, a primped collar and a perfect coif and lives in a fucking very fancy house and plays piano?
Yeah. Yeah, can't deny that one, Stephanie.
Quote, furthermore, and this is from a museum, furthermore, the Twilight Saga labels Quileute society with infidelity and broken family structures. Sam's rise to alpha male stemmed from the necessity to be unlike his deadbeat dad, and the wolf gene comes from his mother's illicit affair with an uncertain but married father. And while many of these traits, being poor, uneducated, having ubiquitous and dysfunctional relationships, are common amongst all groups of people, the Twilight Saga reinforces these shortcomings as synonymous with the Quileute and, in essence, all Native Americans. On top of that, Meyer's own insistence that once a vampire is changed, all the pigment from their skin leaves, making only pale vampires in her world, and vampires are the most beautiful in all of creation. Yeah, and also the fucking Confederate soldier backstory. It's hard to not treat these as being very racist. Yeah, in general, racism aside, which is such a stupid... Racism aside, everyone in this franchise is just a very deeply flawed person. The Cullens' repeated inability to step in and save lives when it doesn't directly involve them is just so horrifically selfish, and it happens all the time. Like, people will die, and the Cullens will be like... And then when it actually happens to them, then they'll step in. But in general, they kind of just don't give a shit about other people, which is, like, fine, but also, like, not fine. Mm-hmm. Especially when, like, you can tell they're, like, vampire X-Men. They all have individual superpowers that none of them just use aside from their own selfish benefit, which I guess is fine. Not everyone has to be good people. This is my segue. This is a quote from The Atlantic. To the naked eye, it may appear that the Twilight Saga is a story about love, and vampires, and family, and abstinence, and racism, and the founding of the Mormon faith. This is the rabbit hole I went down on. Mormonism in the Twilight franchise.
I, like, briefly heard that, because isn't Stephanie a Mormon?
Yes.
Okay.
Very active in the Church of Latter-day Saints.
Okay. So I like, knew that they were intertwined somehow, but I wasn't really sure, like, to what extent. So I'm very excited to educate myself. Thank you.
A lot of times what doesn't really seem to make sense on the surface as far as Twilight, like, love story goes, how they view things like grooming and other small details do kind of make more sense when put in this context. But other things that even I didn't know. So strap in. So this is when I start to quote actual scholarly articles, because, like, this can't just be me talking out of my ass. While most of Meyer's vampires are dangerous, heartless, blood atonement-driven, righteous believers who prey on non-believers, that is not true of the Cullen family, who are the celestial life Mormons of the story. The Volturi, on the other hand, the ancient vampires in Italy, who lead and police vampires everywhere, are a thinly disguised Roman Catholic Church. But Carlisle Cullen is a direct Joseph Smith insert. Carlisle Cullen was born in the mid-1660s, the same period where historic Mormonism was born in Europe. He became a vampire when he was bitten, but not slain by a weakened vampire, and his heroic choice to turn away from vampirism and to eat animal rather than human food turns his eyes golden rather than red. Over the next 2 centuries, he learns all he can about medicine, and in the mid-1800s becomes a doctor, saving rather than taking lives. He then moves west to America.
I'm sorry, not this literally being, like, the Book of Mormon fan fiction. Stephanie! How many times? Take a shot whenever I say Stephanie.
You're gonna say Stephanie more. By placing the birth of the Cullen vision in the same time and place as the birth of Mormon beliefs, and by having Carlisle take up medicinal practice in the 1840s, the same time as Joseph Smith's restoration of the gospel in America, Meyer indicates the allegorical and apologetic meaning of her story. Meyer answers the question of eternity with a presentation of immortality, the question of purpose by presenting a reality that strongly emphasizes marriage and family, the question of morality by presenting a noble and countercultural adherence to an external moral code of conduct. Furthermore, Meyer crafts an origin story and existence for her supernatural characters that closely parallels the Mormon understanding of the large-scale contemporary Latter-day identity. When contextualized by the Mormon understanding that marriage is a central, sacred, eternal bond necessary for full salvation, the obsessive ramblings of a lovesick teenager suddenly become, in their desperation, sacred. Critics shred Bella Swan for her single-minded devotion to her romantic relationship with Edward. To the non-LDS reader, who sees marriage as important but not necessarily the highest calling of man, this is fair. Bella's obsessive dedication to Edward seems immature at best, unhealthy even. To the LDS reader, however, Bella's focus, though perhaps exaggerated and melodramatic, is a perfectly understandable, a picture of the Mormon girl on a theological quest. Motherhood is the most important thing that Bella can aspire to be when she's actually pregnant, but girls reading YA don't want to read about motherhood that spoils the sexy boyish fantasy. So she speed runs motherhood to where it's just the painful birth, a cute couple of days with the baby, and then suddenly Renesmee is a fully functioning, capable adult, and Bella can just hang out with this self-sufficient, fully formed person forever. No raising involved.
Oh my god. Oh my... You're blowing my mind.
Fun fact, in Breaking Dawn, when asked if he thinks Renesmee is the most beautiful girl in the world, Edward disagrees and said that Bella is still prettier than Renesmee. Let's not unpack that. We have no time. And they're also just, like, fun things that sprinkle Mormonism. Like, again, the thing that when Bella wears no makeup and a long sleeve khaki skirt, Edward's like, you're the sexiest you've ever looked right now. The fact that she stays up late because she has to drink soda because Mormons can't drink coffee. Bella gets pregnant after one time having sex. Why Edward is the 100-year-old virgin who refuses to touch Bella until they wed and is framed as the most romantic partner because all he does is exhibit restraint at all times. Stephanie herself does not smoke, drink, watch R-rated movies, so her romance is very PG. It's very swoon-worthy that they don't really do anything other than chastely hold hands.
Isn't that so funny then that isn't 50 Shades of Grey Twilight fanfiction?
Yes.
Oh, the irony. I love it.
And then one critic says, Meyer seems to have a solid understanding of what a horrific experience it is to be assaulted, and the talent to convey it in her story makes it so much worse that she seems to believe that you should just put it behind you if they say sorry about that and give you a halfway thoughtful gift. Women in conservative Christian culture have been expected to forgive men for assaulting them for centuries, whether the attacker apologizes or not, and Meyer grew up Mormon. Obviously, we can't know this for certain, but given the realism of the description and how common sexual assault is and has been, especially in her books, I'd guess this is loosely based on something that might have happened to her, in which she was expected to forgive, and the apology and the gift are the wish fulfillment. Mm. And in general, the section of most of Breaking Dawn is so aggressively pro-life once the actual baby comes into play. Edward hearing Renesmee's thoughts in the womb, because she's already a fully functional person with thoughts and feelings of her own. Rosalie insisting that Edward call Renesmee a baby rather than a fetus. The whole fucking thing with Lee and how real women are women who can give birth. Jacob's later insistence that he was just in love with Bella's unfertilized egg the entire time, like the egg was all he needed to form a connection with the fully formed person. The list just kind of goes on and on. At one point,
I'm sorry, a shiver went up my spine. Oh, just reminded of the whole egg, the Jacob egg thing. Oh, I hate that.
Bella allows Jacob to put a promise ring on Renesmee.
I'm sorry. Was this in part 2?
Yeah.
I missed that. What the fuck? What the fuck? So how old does Renesmee get? Like, what is the oldest that we see her?
I think 8.
In vampire years.
It's so hard because I think she's only like, what, 2 weeks old? No. But they hired like an 8-year-old actress. That's why they had to.
He gave a 2-week-old a promise ring. I'm gonna lose it.
That's why they had to like CGI the baby, because the baby was supposed to look weird because the baby's supposed to have a full set of teeth.
Yeah. Oh, horrified. Oh my god, I'm literally gonna throw up. I'm sorry. This is
to prove that she's already like, she's not just your typical baby.
Yeah.
They don't.
She's not like other babies. Oh my god. Okay, sorry. Continue.
Yeah, and just like the fact that the Volturi is just a blatant standing for the Catholic Church, more specifically the Vatican. Yeah, so like another critic was like, why would Meyer go through such great lengths to show how cruel the Volturi are and how many people are dying at their hands every day in Italy, or reveal that even though they pretend they're all about protecting the safety of their species, they're actually just power-mad tyrants with no sense of responsibility towards anyone but themselves. I love being Catholic.
Yeah, I wonder what that could mean.
This is where it gets deeper. Are you ready? Hold on to your fucking ass.
Oh god.
Historically, and this isn't me coming for you if you're Mormon, okay? Historically, in Mormonism's largest denomination, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, of which LDS, of which Stephanie Meyer is an active participant, leaders, beginning with the founder Joseph Smith, taught that dark skin was a sign of God's curse or a punishment of premortal unrighteousness. Early church leaders taught that after death and resurrection, everyone in the celestial kingdom, the highest tier of heaven, would be white for eternity. And they often equated whiteness with righteousness and taught that originally God made his children white in his own image. Smith reported that in his vision, Jesus had a white complexion with blue eyes, a description confirmed by another reported vision by follower Anson Call. A 1959 report by the U.S. Commission of Civil Rights found that most Utah Mormons believed that by righteous living, the dark-skinned races may again become white and delightsome. Conversely, the church also taught that white apostles would have their skins darkened when they abandoned the faith, and until at least the 1960s in the temple endowment ceremony, Satan was said to have black skin. Several black Mormons were told that they would become white. Hiram Smith told Jane Manning James that God would give her a new lineage, and her patriarchal blessing promised her that she would become white and delightsome. In 1936, Elijah Abel was similarly promised he would be made white in eternity. Darius Gray, a prominent black Mormon, was told that his skin color would become lighter, and in 1978, Apostle LeGrand Richards stated that the curse of dark skin for wickedness and the promise of white skin through righteousness only applied to Native Americans, not black people. Still very interesting when we're talking about Twilight. Does this not track with this idea of Stephanie Meyer being so adamant that all POC vampires turned white upon transformation, and why she was so adamant that no people of color could play vampires in her movie, because vampire venom, remember, bleached the pigment out of skin so they could become perfect.
Stephanie, this is horrible.
At one point, Stephanie Meyer got so sick of the criticism by basically like
I'm sorry. Her just be like, guys, listen. You're
like,
hounding me. What did I do? Oh god.
She was like, no, I can, like, she's like, there are no, like, I'm sick of the gender stereotypes in my story. I'll prove it. For the 10-year anniversary of the first Twilight book, I'm going to rewrite the first Twilight book and swap the genders. So instead of Edward, it's Edith, and instead of Bella, it's Buford.
Buford?
They call him Beau. It's still the masculine word for beautiful, just like Bella was.
Okay.
But that, yeah, she's like, stop saying Twilight is sexist. I'll prove you wrong. I'll rewrite the first book with the genders flipped, and then the story wouldn't need to change. And then she changed it.
She's like, wait.
In general, Beau has a different personality than Bella. He is about 1,000 times more level-headed, capable, understanding of boundaries, not head over heels, not obsessed with Edith, is standing on his firm, very logical.
Yeah, yep.
He's a piano student instead of an old ballet dancer, because boys don't do ballet.
No.
And the biggest difference, is that Beau gets turned into a vampire in the first book. What happened in the first Twilight book is that Bella gets bitten by a vampire, and then Edward, showing that he does have enough restraint to be with her, sucks the venom out without killing her. Edith isn't strong enough to do that. And Beau just becomes a vampire.
So did she rewrite the entire series?
Nope, just the first one.
Just the first book. Okay. That's still a lot of pages.
Edith, at one point there's a scene, it's cliched, but whatever. If it's a stereotype that speaks to you, whatever. But in the first movie and book, Edward saves Bella from getting gang raped in an alley. They do change that in the gender swap rewrite by them just wanting to kill him, because boys can't get sexually assaulted. Mm-hmm. Duh, everyone knows that. And the weirdest thing is, they don't gender swap, they gender swap everyone in the story, except for Bella's parents. Beau still has a dad named Charlie and a mom named Renee. Okay. Because a gruff woman cop would be weird. And God forbid, because the reason that Bella even moves to Forks in the first place is because she wants to give her newly married mom the space to make her new marriage work. And that's weird if a father was just like, can I make my new marriage work with my new wife and get out of here? And also in general, Renee is like the worst mother character in the world, and we know Stephanie has some issues with women, so she seems to be unwilling to make the Renee character traits be put on a man. And here.
This may be me misinterpreting, but I fear that maybe it's not. So wait, is the whole reason, or at least the implied reason within the Twilight franchise, that Bella leaves to live with her dad because her mom got remarried? Okay, so her mom gets remarried, and she's like, I'm gonna leave so you guys can like make your marriage work.
Yes.
Because if a young teen girl were around, that would cause issues in her mom's new marriage?
I don't want to say. But yeah. Okay. And here's the thing. I don't want to assign anything to Stephanie. But she said in interviews that she wrote Twilight originally not for publishing, but for herself when her last son was born, and she realized that she'd have no daughters. So she named her protagonist Bella, the name she would have used if she had a girl, and wrote a series to, quote, escape her life. So at the very least, Stephanie has or had some conflicting thoughts about the very traditional Mormon life that she chose: husband, house, 3 boys, church member. And so she uses escapism through supernatural means: 2 hot boys fighting over plain old me, 1 a Native American werewolf, and 1 the perfect Mormon boyfriend. But she doesn't want to escape her doctrine entirely, or maybe she doesn't even want to. Those influences keep bleeding into her work, as we've seen. And when we get to Bella becoming a mother, Stephanie seems uninterested in actually making Bella a mother, just a glorified babysitter who doesn't lose her hot body, her life, or even her steamy, perfect relationship with her husband. And this part feels more escapism to the author than anything prior, not wanting her escapism character to be shackled down with a realistic depiction of motherhood, not wanting her identity to change at all, not wanting anything permanent to ruin Bella's now perfect life. Bella was always a self-insert fantasy, not just for the preteen audiences, but for their author. And again, I'm not about to shame her for doing that. Like, haha, author self-inserts herself into her work. Again, part of me, I kind of feel bad for Stephanie Meyer, just because, again, she didn't mean for this to be published. She did this online for her, and then she just kind of had the idea to, she didn't mean for her book to sell 100 million copies, become a global phenomenon, and become, like, the target of, like, some of the internet's worst backlash just because people couldn't stand that teenage girls appreciated things. Like, she didn't expect to do all of this, and she definitely bore the brunt of a lot of misogyny, a lot of unbridled rage, and I don't think that's fair. I think the fact that Bella was a self-insert character isn't the gotcha that I think a lot of people say that it is, because who gives a shit? Like, if you're writing YA, yeah, it's a thing of the genre. Stephanie Meyer didn't invent it. But I do think that Twilight obviously has its fair share of criticism. But I think Twilight needs to be criticized, but not for the reasons that it has been criticized in the past. Like, the reason that people hated Twilight is because, ooh, sparkly vampire, ooh, the acting is bad, which I don't even think is their fault. Like, no one gets mad at Robert Pattinson for being a bad actor, but people got mad at Kristen Stewart for being a bad actor. Shit like that. We're like, people hated Twilight because it was dumb and it was cheesy and corny, and you have all these screaming fangirls obsessing over Team Edward and Team Jacob, and it's all so girly and cringy and and not that it romanticizes grooming, not that it treats actual Native American tribes like shit, not that it has some Mormon elements that are very unsavory when it comes to racism or relationship dynamics. None of that. At the very most, it could just be like, this relationship is very unhealthy, which, like, Iggy. Like, yeah, that might be a little unnerving to see, like, 13-year-olds being like, I want a relationship just like them. But, like, 13-year-olds usually don't get into relationships like that. And if so, they kind of look back and they're like, that was weird. It was a fantasy, and it did a very good job selling that fantasy. And so I think it both deserves an apology and also a more deep dive take to task on one of the things that I feel like people don't really don't see a lot of actual harmful stuff in here. They just kind of focus on, like, boo, they made the vampire sparkly, boo. And I'm like, who are you allergic to fun? Fun and happiness.
Can people not imagine anymore?
And, like, again, I'm not gonna lie and admit that Twilight isn't kind of a vibe. Like, there's just something so alluring about this world. It's like, it's all supernatural. Again, it's like this rainy paradise where you're just caught in this. And again, like, Bella as a protagonist is inherently relatable because she's designed to be. She's designed to be kind of a blank slate. She's more, again, described by the things that she isn't versus the things that she is. She's very modest. She doesn't think very highly of herself. And then you have 2 very hot people being like, no, you're the most beautiful girl in the world. And the way that, her as a character becomes more relatable than a lot of other main characters, especially in YA at the time, is, like, she's allowed to be passive in this world. Like, it's way more easy to, like, imagine yourself being like, I'll stop the fight by, like, slicing my hand and enticing the vampires and distracting them, because that's something that you can imagine that you can do. And it can feel very cool being in this, like, world that's so outside of your element, but everyone is just so willing to protect you, and everyone realizes that you're special, and you don't necessarily have to have those really cool powers until later on. you don't have to worry about that until like, book whatever. But for the first like 3 books, it's very much like, I'm just a girl in the world. And it's just so easy to fall into that like hyper romanticism life. And it is, I don't know, it's just fucking fun. And then you kind of take a step back and you go, no. Yeah. Final thoughts. Actually, the Quileute tribe is actually asking for donations because they've been dealing with some land erosion on their reservation for the past couple of years now. And they're asking for like GoFundMe to help relocate them to higher ground. And again, Stephanie Meyer has not given them any money. So I'm also going to link the GoFundMe link, or at least more articles that you can wonder if if you want to peruse and maybe give them money, maybe even Twilight levels of money to relocate them because they've kind of gotten the shaft end of the stick. But yeah, I'm like, I still want to go to Forks. I want to go to Forks so bad. It's a real town. Like, she didn't make up a town.
The Pacific Northwest is beautiful.
And like, they have Twilight Fest. I don't want to go then. But like, the idea of driving in like this Pacific Northwest town where they have like, cheesy gift shops with like knockoff merch, and you can go to like a bakery and get like a like a vampire donut, and like you can go to indie bookstores and get like, I think that would be such a vibe. I still want to go, and I love quoting the movie. I love this shirt, It's the Fluorescent shirt. It's just a good time. But yeah, I think again, like, think critically. And in general, Stephanie Meyer, I am both very sorry that you had to go through with the misogyny wave of the early 2000s, and also meet me outside in the parking lot. You will pay for your crimes. Look what you've done to Team Edward. Look what you've done to Team Jacob. Look how they've massacred my boy. He was the better choice, and I'm going to die. And like, it's just a general bad sign when you, as an author, are like, no, why is everyone not picking my perfect Mormon boyfriend? Why does everyone want to go with the guy who likes her? This sucks.
Let's consider. Okay, 2 questions. One, it's the fluorescence. It is in response to her being like, oh, your eyes are like yellow, right? And he's like, it's a fluorescence.
Yes. Okay. One of the reasons that it's so funny is like, he's in the hallway and suddenly he's being very nice to her, and she's like, your eyes are different colors. A lot of lip biting in this one. He goes, no, because the first thing she does is she goes, hey, do you wear contacts? And he goes, no. Like, he says it like it's a stupid thing. And she goes, yeah, just like the other day your eyes were like black, and now they're like gold. And he goes, it's the fluorescence. And then he just turns and walks away because he realized, he goes, shit, why didn't I just say I wore contacts?
I want to rewatch the first Twilight now.
Dude, my favorite thing is to get high off my ass and rewatch the first Twilight. You better hold on. Look at my monkey, man. That scene where they obviously jump on a trampoline before they reach in the air and grab the ball. It's actually kind of clever that they wait to play baseball until it's a thunderstorm, so the crack of the bat can be interpreted as like lightning.
That scene is so good. Okay, and then question 2.
Of course.
So you said that Stephanie wrote this not intending for it to be published at first. Do you know what platform she was originally publishing on?
I think it was an online platform. I don't know if it was
just like a blog or something.
I think it must have been. I don't know.
I was just curious.
I didn't follow that trajectory. I don't know if she posted it on like online forums and then someone's like, you should send this to a publishing thing, or if someone just were like, you should send it to like an indie publishing thing, and then she got the rights. I don't super know the process in which this happened, but I do know that even though she was like, yeah, I'll publish it, who knows, I'll judge it up, whatever. She obviously didn't expect it to be a fucking global billion-dollar phenomenon that launched the careers of like Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson and Taylor Lautner. Not that they hadn't done career-defining roles like The Goblet of Fire and Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
I was about to say, let's not forget. Dream.
And I mean, like, to their credit, in the first, like, couple of Twilight movies, they did cast Native American actors to play Native Americans, except for Taylor Lautner. Which, I mean, that's cool. You don't see that happening a lot. Like, and there's smatterings of cool things here and there. Like, the dynamic of Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson is so fucking funny, where Kristen Stewart is like being directed to act the fucking worst way, and Robert Pattinson wants to fire his agent at any given moment, and it's just so clear from early on, even if Kristen Stewart didn't know it yet, that she was just a lesbian floundering. that one scene without CGI where you just see Kristen Stewart patting Taylor Lautner's head because they had to CGI the wolf skin later, but she's just patting his, like, he's wearing like a green screen wetsuit, and she just has to, like, straight face pat his head. And the fucking robot baby, because they didn't know they had to do CGI for Renesmee. They thought they could just do, like, a puppet for Renesmee, and she looks fucking terrifying. Yeah. You've seen the puppet, right? She looks like a frog.
I don't know if I've seen the puppet. I know I've seen the CGI version.
I'm like quickly trying to open it up. Oh God.
Sorry, GT Dave is up.
It looks very similar to GT Dave, actually.
Okay, that is the puppet. What does the CGI version look like? Because I thought that's...
I feel like I look exactly like this. Oh, they nicknamed her
Chuckesmee
because he kind of looks like Chucky.
Yeah, if you don't know what the puppet Renesmee looks like, I feel like you probably do because it shows up in, like, memes all the time, but yeah, that's horrifying. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, so why did they make the puppet so old? Because the CGI, like, looks like a baby. Like, that's just a baby.
Oh, yeah, and this is how old you see Renesmee.
Has full hair. When she gets a promise ring?
Yeah.
That girl is eight years old. She's 8 years old. Yeah, that's horrifying. Yeah. Oh my God, I'm so glad that you took me on this journey. I, like, knew that there were things about Twilight that I was scared of finding out. And frankly, I was rightfully afraid. But I'm glad to be educated now. Yeah,
moral takeaways, be nice to things that teen girls love. Don't be racist towards Native Americans. Don't imply that they're all, like, wife-beating pedophiles who don't go to school. Yeah. And Mormons, huh?
Huh? Yeah, that's about all I can say to that. Just question mark. Yeah, interesting. Well, thank you guys for listening. We are on, it feels so weird to just close it out like a normal podcast. We are on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Peace.